couple seconds. Hey there, Rich Munroe with B&B Investing Group. Thanks for jumping on this week. As usual, B&B Investing Group helps new investors and experienced investors kind of navigate the short-term rental model. And so whether you're doing acquisitions, master leasing, or actually managing properties, which is what we're going to touch on today. I've got a good friend of mine here, Elliot Rosen, that's a very experienced short-term rental manager and operator, and good friend of mine. And so I'm happy to have him on today to kind of do a deep dive on how things are going. So, Elliot, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got started with short-term rentals?
Sure. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely.
I consider myself a grandfather in the short-term rental space. I've been playing around here in this sandbox for about 12 years. I started on the side, actually, as many folks do. This is a second career for me. I was a biologist with the FDA, so I come with a kind of analytical skill set and love jumping into the data. And I sort of built something over time. Started in Washington, D.C., working with mom and pop individuals, second houses, slowly worked up to investors, and started building out a team of people to work for me so that I could continue doing my W-2 job at the same time. And eventually I came to the conclusion that science was really hard and really frustrating, and this is a heck of a lot more fun. So all of that taken into account, the push and pull factors, I said goodbye to my biology job and did this full time, and been growing the business with a focus on management, the way that you described.
Very cool. So that's interesting. So you just kind of dove right in. What got you interested in doing Airbnb or short-term rentals? Did you have, did you already do like a room or a basement, or kind of how did you kind of get started to begin with? What led you in that direction?
Yeah, my origin story was I was actually an arbitrage play. I didn't know it at the time, but I was renting an apartment and then met a girl, now my wife, moved in with the girlfriend, and had this apartment that I wasn't really using. So I started renting it out on this new platform called Airbnb, and it turned out there was all kinds of demand. The income exceeded my actual rent, and I just had to move out when I got bookings. So I was gladly doing that, and that worked out really nicely until the time came to renew my lease, and I said I'll cut ways with this. But some years passed, and then it came time to buy a house with my new wife, and we were looking at buying something small or buying something much bigger with a potential rental ADU, as they say, additional rental unit in it. Accessory dwelling unit, I guess is the phrase. So we bought a English basement row house, with an English basement bottom, and then started renting that out. And it paid half the mortgage some months, and some months it paid the whole mortgage. And from there, it just kind of took off to start managing for other people.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, usually you do have to have somewhat of an entry point to get some experience with it, to be comfortable and confident to get in front of another person and say, hand the keys over to me, I'll take care of everything. It's usually very difficult to do that if you're just starting from scratch, right? So it's good that you already had that experience. How long ago was that again?
Maybe 8 years ago.
Okay. So you and I have been doing it about the same length of time. I had also started out with rental arbitrage, and it was about a little over 8 years ago. Even though I had properties that we were doing rehabs on and long-term rentals, for me, it was a light bulb moment with short-term rentals being 2 to 3 times the revenue of a long-term lease. And so yeah, you and I have been in it as grandfathers about the same timeline. So very cool. So tell me a little bit about that first management client and what that property was like.
It was kind of word of mouth at the early onset. It was hey, I have this neighbor, and they have this extra English basement that they can't rent out. Do you have any, ideas? And Elliot, he's a Airbnb expert, or he's done this before. He knows what to rent it out like and what guests are expecting. It can't be that hard, right? It's a combination of hospitality and property management, which just about anybody can pick up. So use your intuition, and you know what you like, And generally speaking, that's what other people would like, or you kind of find your own niche, I guess, as people like to say. You find the avatar that you want to serve, and you figure out, what kind of property would suit that, or you start with the property and you figure out what kind of avatar is seeking that property. Maybe it's a family, maybe it's grandparents visiting their grandkids, maybe it's just young folks that are coming to town for the first time and they're looking for their first apartment. In the meantime, they need something simple to work from. So it was kind of a slow word of mouth growth, I would say, to get up and going and get that confidence.
So how long did it take, to get some scale, and how many units did you get up to over what period of time?
Yeah, I was doing this on the side, so it was more of a hobby at the beginning. I wasn't focusing on it. I had my W-2 job. This was just extra money in the pocket. And, maybe in the first year I was really focusing on it, we added, 5 properties or so. But, quickly you start building other pieces of the business, like a virtual assistant and a good handyman that'll run around for you anytime you need to, and cleaning teams. And once you get those other pieces in place, the business kind of comes to you, I've found. And you can find other ways to accelerate it once you achieve a certain level. Now we have an entire group that helps us advertise our services to potential clients. But I think there's always ways to market yourself at different levels, depending on where you are. And it's just a matter of scaling things incrementally.
Yeah. And so how many properties are you managing now?
We're hovering just over about 100. We had about 4 a month though right now. So there's a pipeline that's coming through. And
very nice.
We're actively marketing in a few different markets.
What markets are you in right now?
So I started in Washington, D.C., and my goal is to kind of become a regional player in a number of different places around Washington, D.C. within about 3 hours driving distance. So I want a few cabins in Western Maryland, in the Virginia mountains, in the suburbs of D.C., Annapolis, out to the Chesapeake Bay and Rappahannock and the rivers and Lake Anna, a variety of places with not too much concentration in one single place, so that we can retarget these guests and say, hey, we know you enjoyed your beach vacation, come to the mountains with us and save money by going direct instead of using Airbnb or VRBO the next time.
Very cool. And then what's the structure on the management fees that you have with your clients?
It really depends on, it's always a commission base, because I want people to know there's skin in the game for us. And I try to make sure we're making a certain threshold of money per property. Now numbers change. At one point, I'd be happy with $500 a month. I need a lot more than that because I got so much more overhead now. But I would change the percentage that we take based on how much I think the property can make. So if it's a low grossing property, we'll take a higher percentage. And if it's a high grossing property, we may discount our rates. Or maybe it's an investor who says, here's 10 properties, I'll give him a better deal if I know that we're getting a certain amount of business out of it. Because eventually you start hiring full-time US-based people, and that's very expensive labor. They are expensive to maintain, and they're worthwhile, but you got to be more careful about which properties you bring on. You don't want to see, and just as important, the clients that you want to work with. Sometimes the clients that prove to be more of a headache than the property.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because when I started with management, I was like happy to take anybody with a pulse and was happy to grow, and very quickly recognized after a couple of years that I got to be a little bit more selective on who I jump on with, because you don't want to have some of those high maintenance folks that may not be necessarily a good fit, and you can be a little bit more selective so that you're not spending a lot of time on certain clients that are kind of high maintenance. And so how do you handle that? I guess with so many leads coming in, are you being very selective in that regard, or?
Yeah, a good deal. And I kind of feel people out, and I'm not afraid to say, hey, look, I'm happy to be a free resource to you. You can tell all your friends about the great work that we do, and I will tell you what to do, but I don't think we're going to be a good fit for you. And I think you should continue doing what you're doing, or you ain't made for this business and you should do long-term rental, or go this path or talk to this other person because I'm not the guy for you. And I understand that, we're not going to be the best partner for everybody. And I think people respect that. And either they say, okay, I will really step back, or they say, oh, I appreciate your honesty and thank you for your time.
Yeah, sometimes they're better off self-managing. There's those micromanagement type people that end up wanting to be actively involved, and they're usually much better off just kind of doing it themselves instead of engaging with a management company, right? So
yeah, maybe they'll come back, let them fall on their face, say, okay, I'm so sorry, you were right, here, take it over for us.
Yeah, they always sometimes underestimate what's involved. So speaking of which, so with 100 properties, what does your operation look like to kind of handle that workload?
There's a team for guest services, there's a team for operations, to handle things in each market that we are present in. And then there's kind of a general manager who's a person who can really fit into different places. Because we're still a relatively small operation, we have to train people and cross-train people and kind of reshuffle the functions. Most of the high dollar folks actually can do things remotely, talking to vendors, talking to guests, talking to the property owners. These are high dollar functions, but they don't necessarily need to be present, every day on at listings. Other people can do inspections. Other people can do cleaning and fix stuff and gather the information you need. And that's how I've kind of leveraged that help. And my guest services team comes straight out of the Airbnb call centers. I found them through these methods that you can use and to find Filipino virtual assistants that have some experience working at Airbnb and understand short-term rental. And there's also folks in Latin America that are very good too. And they kind of served as my backbone as I grew up. I didn't hire a US-based person until like my third year or so. Once we got to 30 properties or so, 40 properties. And now that I've grown that piece, I can continue to grow my inventory. All of this has to be done slowly at scale, in my experience, because if you grow one part too fast, then everything starts falling apart. So you got to have a good foundation.
Good balancing act with it.
Yeah.
So the how many virtual assistants are in the back office supporting guest communications?
Only 3 actually, and that covers a shift, 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to midnight.
Okay.
And that also covers some additional kind of admin tasks that we can shop out. So help with preparing the books, or help with managing reputation, help with filing claims, drafting up these accidental claims so that we can get our clients reimbursed when there's accidental damage done. There's a lot of back work and small tasks that can add up really quickly. Even as Airbnb kind of gets tougher and VRBO gets tougher and tightening the strings on what they expect. But if you can pivot your team members to tackle some of these tasks the same way that these platforms are doing, they can hire a call center person for a certain number of dollars, and they can make your life harder to provide more documentation or respond to something in a certain period of time and gather info. But if you have the right people in the right place, you can keep up with them and you can develop your game alongside of the dynamic changes that the platforms are making.
Yeah. So when I was at my highest, I had 75 properties, and the guest communications and the back office team was fine at kind of, always having one person available. I think back then I had 24 hours, had like maybe 4 reps that were on different shifts. Isn't there a point when you get to a certain number that you're going to need more than one person doing guest communications, or is there, have you kind of identified what that might look like as you continue to grow?
Yeah, technically right now we've got a VA doing the guest communications, and there's always a US-based person backing them up as well. So it's kind of a tiered system. There's an issue, it's a guest issue that can't easily be resolved, or the guest is unhappy, needs a phone call, needs a vendor engaged. That's when the ticket kind of gets handed off to the US-based person that's also on call. And that's how we maximize our time. So the guest communications team, they can handle the guest communications, and then the VA, they can handle the guest services. And then we have a team of 3 that tier
Okay,
one
very cool.
support, tier two support, then the general manager, and then if it's a 5-alarm fire, Elliot is engaged. But that's rare and rare. It's really a long road to that, and it was hard for me to realize that. But the sooner that I could get myself out of different functions, the sooner it freed me to grow the business in multiple directions.
So your main focus is kind of developing new relationships, working on the pipeline, adding new listings, having that relationship with the clients. That's kind of your main portion as far as the week to week work that you're doing.
Yeah. And more of that is moving into other full-time existing employees. Owner relations is a new person that I hired. Unless it's saving the client, I've got somebody now who can kind of keep things going just fine, answer questions and tell owners, hey, we need new amenities because guests are asking for these things. So let's stay in the 95th percentile and add a putting green. Have you thought about a hot tub? Have you thought about a hammock? Something simple. Those kind of functions, bookkeeping, even sales on the sales side. Now we've got a machine to roll out our customer relationship management. We got a system that is sending out postcards to people who own houses that we want to manage, and then somebody's fielding that lead and warming that lead, and then scheduling a call with one of us. All of these functions kind of get higher and higher stakes, I guess. But if you can find competent people or procedures to maximize the return on them, it frees me up to think about other things that may be even more profitable or add more deals.
So what's your couple years goal? Are you trying to get to 1,000? I mean, what's your, as you continually feed the beast and add more units, what's your future goals look like?
I'd really like to build out more of the region that is missing, which is kind of the summer season, getting more properties in some of the markets that I know will be successful, that are very popular and very competitive already, but I think we can bring a pretty competitive edge and offer something that's somewhat unique. There's not really a regional player in any markets that I know of. People tend to focus geographically. It's very hard to do. It's very hard to have boots on the ground that function well, that take direction well, and execute for a long time. You look at Vacasa and you look at Sonder and their struggles to roll that out at that level. Same with front desk in urban areas. It's hard to do. And when it comes down to it, it's a hospitality business, like we say, right? It's not just, I'm going to achieve this with technology and good procedures. You have to have people who embrace the procedures and then continually pay them well and encourage them and have growth opportunities for them. So that's how I see it. Growing through people, growing through properties.
And so you're comfortable with that 3-hour travel time radius in terms of the target area?
Yeah. We still have onesie twosies here and there. There's a really cool property on a lake in Maine that we've been working on for a few years. One off in Jamaica, in the Grill Jamaica. Even doing that, there was a learning function of that. Maybe those don't make so much money, but doing something that far away kind of forces you to hone your skill set and figure out what are the important things that I have to pay attention to, what are the absolute pieces that I need in place to feel confident that it's going to run smoothly. And then apply that same system to something that's only 3 hours away or 2 hours away. And, one property is fine, but 3 properties is great. And once you hit 5, you're ready to go to 10 and you've got all the pieces in place.
So you didn't really give me a number. So what's your, do you have like a number in mind as far as how many you want to get to?
I don't think it's really about a number of doors. It was just a few years ago that people would walk around at some of these conferences that you and I would attend to. And it was, how many keys do you have? How many doors do you have? And, it's all relative. You could have, 10 properties generating $200,000 each in gross revenue. And the guys doing rental arbitrage in Chicago, Dallas, and Philly need a whole heck of a lot more properties to do the same thing. And
Yeah.
I think I'll take what comes, but a good goal is getting good clients that really understand the vision and continually to replace properties that fall off or get sold with even higher performing properties. So,
Mhm.
so replacing a property that generates $1,000 a month with one that generates $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
And then you can always go back and dig a little bit more. But I've kind of gone away from the size is everything mentality and thought about a little more quality.
Yeah, I've kind of done that over the last several years too. So, I think we've downsized our portfolio exactly what you described. It's better quality over quantity, right? And so just kind of refining that. So you mentioned there's a marketing firm that helps you feed that pipeline. Tell us a little bit about that process. And it seems like it's working well. How long has it been going, and how many units have you added since you engaged with those folks?
Yeah. There's a company called Vintory, Vintory, that has been around for maybe 4 years or so. They have a unique offer in our space. They do something very similar to what real estate agents have been doing for a very long time, which is using direct mail, sending postcards to property owners to say, "Hey, I'd love to sell your house," or "I'd love to buy your house," or "Do you know your house is worth this much, and I can help you sell it." And we use the same sorts of data. We add on maybe email addresses that are available or any other public information that we can get, so we can um, send them email as well as postcards, and try to convince them that they should let us manage their house. And then we have system in place, a CRM, a customer relationship management software, that it all backs into, so we can see anyone's interaction with it. If somebody gets the postcard and then scans the little QR code on it, we know they might be interested. We should follow up with a phone
Hmm.
call. Or maybe they called us, or maybe they sent us a text message for more information. And
So
then we
other than
can
the
find them.
Yeah, other than the feeding those leads to you, are they also kind of helping you with the sales process and talking to some of those folks and pre-qualifying, or do they just hand them off as a warm lead at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can get all this information and quickly be overwhelmed in data, right? And then
Hmm.
it's a whole nother job, just chasing down leads, warming leads, finding them. And I quickly realized, oh man, I'm in trouble. I got more business than I know what to do with. And I forgot to call that guy yesterday. I told him I'd call him back. Or, you know, I had a bit of a sales background before I turned to the healthcare industry and biology. But I love selling, and it hurt me, as a
Hmm.
salesperson, to not be warming those leads and closing deals. So there came around another iteration of their business. They're smart folks at Venturi, and they said, "Hey, we got another solution for you. We got somebody who can help warm those leads for you, a fractional person, as they say, part time. You don't have to go and hire another person for $60,000 a year. Pay us X for each month, and this person will answer the phone. They'll write back emails. They'll respond to texts right away, so that people are getting information, and then set up phone calls for you. Schedule them for you."
Hmm.
So that was great, and I've been doing that for almost a year. And guess what? I ran into the same problem. I had even more business, and I had to close these leads, or finish them off. So they developed um, another service. They've been running for about a year now, and I'm about to start it. I can have a follow up call with you to tell you how it's going a few months from now. But I'm kind of
Nice.
excited about it. And that part is they'll close the loop. So there's another person who's fractional, who's basically a sales closer, and can represent me as the face of my business
Hmm.
and get the deals completed and then signed.
So the since you've joined this group over the last year, how many new clients have you been able to onboard?
So I started working with them almost 3 years ago.
Oh wow,
And
okay.
so yeah, I would say there's at least 3 dozen, maybe four
Okay.
dozen clients. And in my mind, as long as I just reached the threshold pretty quickly within a reasonable amount of time, 6 months, a year, because
So
marketing
you
takes some time, right?
so you pretty
To
much
cover
doubled
that
your
monthly nut. Yeah,
yeah
everything else is gravy, right? So as long as they
yeah.
maintain those clients, then everything else is gravy.
So are they a better solution for somebody that like you were you were already at 50 plus units? Are they a better solution for that type of company, or are they also engaging with startup property management companies that might only have a couple or a handful of clients so far?
I think they can really work for anybody, especially if you're smaller and focused. You got to have
Hmm.
a decent website, and they even helped me build a great landing page that explained all of the things that I do. But
Hmm.
you and I have buddies that started up just in the last 2 or 3 years. They're still kind of boutiquey, maybe a dozen or
Yeah.
so rentals, and
Hmm.
and they had to start from somewhere. And it was 1, 2, 6, 12, and a service like this, if you can lay out the investment, does have return if you know how to focus and explain your value to people
How
that are
expensive is
excited
it?
about short-term rental. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
How expensive is their fee for services?
So you're paying like $1 and change or something for every mailer that you're sending out. You got to do that every month, and
The
you got to
marketing
send lots of
expense.
those out, right?
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
your marketing spend, and that's separate. They're not making any money on that. And then
Right.
depending on the level of service, it can be $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. Um, you're paying for the market, per se.
Yeah, I
So
got you.
it's probably like $2,000 to $3,000 for your first market, and then if you have additional markets, you can negotiate some kind of discounts. But
So you pay that one time, or is that a monthly fee?
that's a monthly fee
Okay.
for using their services. And in my mind, once I replace that as rental income or as commission,
Hmm.
okay, so I'm spending $5,000 a month, say, on marketing. Well, my average home is probably generating about $1,000 in profit. So if I could get to 5 houses within a
Hmm.
year, I figured, okay, cool. Everything after that is going to be regularly paid for, and the next thing will be profit.
Makes sense.
As long as I don't lose those clients, right? You can't
Yeah.
can't lose the ones that come in the door. Not have too much churn, as they say.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. So, this last question I'd like to cover with you, Elliot, is, if you've got one piece of advice that you could share with somebody that's just getting started, that's wanting to grow a management operation with short-term rentals like you have, what kind of advice would you give that person to get started, that's getting started, based on what you know now?
Yeah, yeah. I keep it simple and say don't be afraid. And you can start at any level. You can ease your way into it, just like I did. It took me years. I left a good paying government job to do this, and I've got a young family, and it was a leap of faith. But if you do it over time, you can build it that way. If you are really excited about this and you got some confidence and some investment money, it doesn't take too much to kind of get started and up and going, and you can pick your track, like Rich says. It may be management, it may be arbitrage, it may be buying properties and flipping them and turning them into short-term rentals for yourself. There's a lot of ways to get started, and every path and journey in this business is different, and you'll find your own way. Just get out there, meet people, talk to people. Everyone's a friend in this short-term rental business, and that's one of the things I love about it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Elliot. Really appreciate it. It's actually long overdue to have you on, so I'm happy. And I'm looking forward to kind of getting an update on the new program that you're testing out and see how that goes. And thanks everybody for watching. And for those of you just tuning in, obviously we'll probably get a lot of folks watching us on the replay as well. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you want to talk about growing your business and want to see strategically how that we might be able to help you. You can shoot a message on Facebook Messenger, and we can schedule some time to talk and have a quick strategy session. So until then, we'll see everybody again next week. Thanks everybody for jumping on. And Elliot, thanks again, buddy. Really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Always fun.
All
Bye
right.
now.
Take care.